as women, when like our foreplay starts the moment after we had sex, like the moment after orgasm finishes, foreplay's already begun. And I heard this.
Is that true? All right, continue.
You obviously don't know anything about this. Go ahead, Riley. Keep talking.
What's going on, you incredible people? Welcome back to another week of Rawthentic Radio with Eric and Riley. And this is going to get really confusing for you guys today because we have an incredible guest joining us today, and her name is also Riley. Spell R-I-L-E-Y. I'm R-Y-L-I-E. If you don't know, we have an Instagram platform for singles out there. So all you singles who need some encouragement, we want to speak to you. It's at Rylie, R-I-L-E-Y, and Riley, R-Y-L-I-E. Girl first, then the guy, because ladies first. Am I right?
That's how we do it.
Riley, thank you for joining us. Riley's originally from New Zealand. She is a Kiwi. She's a Spitfire, a truth teller. She loves Jesus, has some of the most incredible stories you'll ever hear in your life. She's a really, really good friend and a ministry partner, and she has so much wisdom. So you guys, I'm right where you're at right now. Lean in, because we're about to break it down. And let me remind you, here's why we're here. We want to talk about things that all of us think about, but nobody wants to speak to.
And so on that note, and I have to say, Riley's also a friend of mine.
Absolutely.
So when our YLIE and I were talking about who we wanted to have on for this topic, we picked you because we were both very comfortable with you, because we're talking about the M word.
What's
tonight.
the M word?
Masturbation.
Wait, what? That's the subject?
My generation.
You didn't tell her
about that.
You didn't tell her?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we were talking about mentorship, the other M word.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's an M word, but that's not the one we're talking about tonight.
We're just messing with you guys. She knew.
Nice try. She did know. And she just proved the validity of Riley's introduction.
Absolutely. Spitfire.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about this topic. Okay. So right where you're at right now, pause. You've probably done it.
No.
Wait, what?
Everyone, let me just say this. Let's just get this off the table. Everybody around this table right here who has never masturbated, raise your hand.
Let me just sink down.
Wait. You didn't raise your hand.
Yeah.
Girls do?
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually had a friend who was boomer age. And he was talking about porn at a church service. And he was talking to the guys. It was obvious this was a guy issue. And I went to him shortly after the service is over, and being the quiet, kind little guy I am, I said, dude, do you know how irrelevant you are? He's like, what?
Yeah.
I said, you just talked to a whole bunch of people like porn is a guy issue.
Yep.
And in today's world, porn is a male-female issue. And the reason I know that is because I talk about my life very openly. And so a lot of millennials talk to me very openly. And I have spiritual daughters and young women that I mentor. And yes, guys can actually mentor young women. And they talk to me about their struggles with masturbation. So Riley, as a woman, what you got to say, girl?
Well, I want to second that. It's not only a man's struggle. But for me, it started when I was like 13, and honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, whoa, this like feels so good. And it was just on and off, and I didn't really have the places to talk about it, and no one was talking about it.
Did it feel wrong at first when you were doing it?
At first, no, because I felt like I was so young and naive, and I didn't have the language around it and the understanding of what I was doing. It was just like, oh, I'm exploring and I have no idea. This just feels natural.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later on, my mom takes me away on the weekend on this, like, it's called this, like, she calls it the weekend. And I'm like, what's the weekend? And we go to like this Airbnb up in these mountains in New Zealand. And she starts to tell me about sex and pornography and masturbation. And then I was like, oh, flip.
You're like, so that's what that was.
That's what I was doing.
So how old were you?
So at this point, I'm probably about like 14.
Okay. And it started when?
When I was probably like 13. So it hadn't been long.
Okay.
And I was like, and my mom, she was actually quite clever. She's like, it's okay. Just don't get addicted to it. But I knew that deep down that was not her.
Wait. Say that sentence one more time.
It's okay. Just don't get addicted to it.
Okay.
And I feel like that was a clever move as a parent, because instantly shame, the heaviness of shame wasn't as strong as it could have been in a lot of other ways of
having. Your mom was a pastor, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so I think my mom also knew just how common it was. And she wanted to create, I love that she started that conversation, because then we started to have a conversation about it. But there was like on and off years where like sometime I wasn't, and then all of a sudden I would like kick into it, and it would be just like this cycle. And then I would be like, oh no, I feel so guilty. I feel so like I need to repent this. And then I would stop. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that, and I mean, the only person I at this point had talked to about it was my mom.
Yeah.
But no one else.
Which I started to interject, but I think that's pretty incredible, because I know me at that age, I'm not admitting to my parents. Like, even if my mom, if my dad at the time was like, hey, Riley, and I know that I'd been doing it, I would have been like, wait, what's that? I've never heard of it. I don't know what masturbation is. This is all news to me. Like, so it's kind of just cool that you had that relationship with your mom, that one, she would actually talk to you about it, and two, you felt comfortable.
Yeah.
I actually had a super embarrassing, and I think I was either 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. And
your mom caught you, huh?
No, but my dad.
Imagine that.
That's a nightmare. Oh, it happens.
My dad found out, and he was intensely upset. And I was like, dude, I didn't even know what was going on. But that, like, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to hide that better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I want to talk about really quick, just some of like, how did you first hear about it? So I was super blessed, honestly, by a youth group.
Wow.
Who my youth pastor, we had this thing called reality groups, and the guys would all come together and the girls, and ironically it was at my house. So the guys are downstairs. There's like 90 people, and like 48 go up, and they're all women, and the rest stay down. I didn't want to do the math for what the rest was, but you get the point. And we would talk about it every week. And so there's a principle, like the first to the truth wins. And what I loved about my youth pastors is they knew that principle. Like, if I can get to the truth of this first, and they hear it from me, even though it's awkward, or, most people don't talk about it, they're talking about it in high schools.
Did they talk about it before you heard about it at school?
Yes.
Wow.
So, and I was an LB, meaning I was a late bloomer. And so I'm hearing about it before it's a struggle for me. Like, I probably didn't struggle with it until deep into high school, junior year. And when I mean late bloomer, I mean like, puberty took a minute for your boy. So I had other issues because of that.
That was not me. I was an EB.
What's that mean? An early
bloomer. Yeah, like 10.
No.
Yes.
So I was an MB.
Middle bloomer. Mm-hmm. Did you get armpit hair like at 10?
10 and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was so jealous of you.
It was like that.
So did you find it on your own, or like did people talk about it?
No. It's totally on my own.
Wow. Okay. And so, and I think we're going to get back to Riley's story, because we want to we want to have the conversation. First of all, we want to say we're not here just to bring answers and to solve every problem. We're here creating a space for conversation to happen and to stop making it so taboo to talk about in church, because if Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, then surely he's got something to say about this. Surely there's an environment where the believers can talk about this. And so I just think it's super important to realize, like, hey, let's just all breathe for a second.
Yeah, because we're not here to help. Like, if you're hoping by listening to this that you're going to find the justification and we're all about it, we're not going to give you that justification.
Yeah.
And if you're hoping as a mom or dad wondering who in the world you could get to tell your kids to never do that, or they're going to
so you don't have to do it.
We're not that guy either.
Link.
We actually just want to cause you to think and own this issue in your own life and figure out, like, how do I maintain my connection to God, my connection to myself, and deal with this issue?
Yes. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. So Riley, you struggled with it off and on. Pick up. How did you get to a place, or what ended up happening?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I think that one of the most important things is questions. And it's like, when we want to end something we're struggling with, one of the most important things is questions and self-awareness.
That's good.
And so it was about me asking myself, what's going on before I'm doing this?
When you say that, you said one of the ways to get to the bottom of what we're struggling with.
Yeah.
Did you get to a point where you felt like you were struggling with it?
Yeah, because I was realizing it was becoming like a pain mechanism or a numbing tactic or an escape.
Okay.
And I knew that my motive behind it was unhealthy. And I was like, you know, your body might get a 30-second high, but it felt like my spirit was grieving for minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was that aftertaste. It was like almost like this spiritual bitter aftertaste that I would finish and I'd be like, oh, like I know people are like, oh, it's okay, it's fine. But deep down, I'm like, why then do I feel the need to repent?
Wow.
What is that connection? Why is my spirit feeling like it's mourning?
You were convicted.
Yeah. And I also had to sit there and assess myself. Is this guilt from a culture that puts a certain pressure on, or is this genuine spirit-filled conviction?
Wow.
And I think why I realized, at first I think it was guilt, because guilt led me to isolation, but conviction led me to empowerment.
So let me stop you for a second. If you're listening to this and you think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to give that up, so I'm done listening, stay with it for a minute.
Yeah.
This is a process.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
And before I just continue on the story, I just want to say, like, I'm so sorry to the people out there that really didn't feel like they have or currently have the space to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, I was reading the largest study on masturbation, and they said 92% of American men and 76% of American women, and that's in 2018. I'm like, it's definitely risen since then.
Wow. Especially during quarantine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The number of messages I get on Instagram of girls being like, I'm struggling. And so I just want to say that I'm sorry that we haven't had those spaces to have this conversation. I'm glad I'm here and we're talking about this. And so back to my story, I'm realizing more and more often that it's coming from a place of like numbing, or I'm trying to escape. And I kept trying to end it, and then I would stop it, and then a few months later I would continue it. And then I would stop it and I would continue it. And I'm like, this is like wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. Yeah. And I'm like, how many cycles do I have to go through this? Like, I felt empowerment, I felt freedom. And then I'm like, oh, dang, I'm back at it again. Like a rough day, or something bad happened, or I'm justifying it. Like the tune of my justification was, it was good. I mean, we can justify. We're humans. We're pretty good at justification. And it wasn't until a friend talked about it. So this is the first time I've talked about it with anyone other than my mother.
Yeah.
And I'm about 20, and she goes, you know, I just told God. And I'm like, oh man, I've never told God. I always thought whenever I did it, God left the room. He's like, peace out, like I'm out. But God never left the room. He never does. And I just had to realize that the belovedness, that no matter what I do, no matter how many times I do it, that God still loves me. And that was so hard to wrestle with. But this friend goes, you know, I told God about it, and I expressed, and I put it in prayer. And to me, when I heard that, I was like, no, like I could not do that. I could not talk about God, like with God to this.
God does not talk about the M word.
Oh no.
Because if he did, we'd hear about it at church, right?
Oh.
Mic drop. So later that night, after I'm hanging out with my friend, I just get back and I'm like, I just get my journal out and I start writing and I'm like, God, and for the first time ever, I wrote the word masturbation out in my journal. Wow. And I was just like, God, I want freedom from this. And I know you're a God that could instantly give me freedom. And I have never struggled with it since then.
Wow.
And what was it about me verbalizing this to God and then I also had that friend that I continued just to carry on that conversation.
Yeah.
What was it about the verbalization, but also the accountability? Yeah. Those two things were what gave me the full freedom. And I'm not going to lie, like, you know, there's still times when I'm like, shoot, like, I would love to do that, or like, I want to have sex, because it's our desire. Yeah. It's our God-given desire. Sure. But I had those people that I call and I'm like, yo, and like even the other day, this is how open my conversation is to my mom. I'm like, Mom, I really want to, or like, I really want to have sex. And she's like, go for a run. And so I go for a run. I come back and I'm like, I still feel it. And she's like, journal. And I start journaling. And then she's like, call another friend. And I call another friend. And then it like passes. But those desires, or that urge maybe is a better word, is like a wave.
Can I just congratulate you on that?
Yeah.
Because it is so few people who are willing to come forward with themselves in those moments, especially. And some people do it once.
Yeah.
And then you'll go for the run. And then you come back and you're like, I'm not going to be alone with Jesus for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a rare person who will keep coming back and going, hey, I still need help.
Yeah.
This is what I'm called to do in this area. I still need help. That's an amazing perspective.
And it's been really cool to see the domino effect, because now I'm like, let's talk about it. With all my friends, I just bring it up. I start sharing my story.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man, I've been struggling with it. And now I'm that accountability partner with my friends.
Yeah.
But it took that vulnerability. And sometimes we think vulnerability is weakness, but vulnerability is, I think, a measure of courage.
Yeah.
One of the ultimate measures of courage.
Oh, yes.
So I want to shift and ask you something too.
Okay.
So you talk about it being a struggle and how you had that moment, or, you know, that season of conviction where it was like, this maybe isn't the best. There's probably people out there who maybe don't see it as a struggle because for them, this is their only option unless they're going to go have sex. You know what I mean? So for them, it's like, this is my safekeeping. And I'm going to ask you a general question. Because, and I'll just say for me, when I had struggled with it, when I have done it, it's been because this is if I don't do this, I'm going to act out either by looking at porn or by, my desires build. And, you know, I could hook up with a girl.
Because it builds up it actually is a physical thing. It does build up in your body.
It is biological.
Yeah.
And and for when I've done it, it's been like, well, I got to do something with this. I still want to honor God.
Yeah.
And so my question is this, is it right or wrong? Like, is it wrong for the people out there who do it?
I would say no. I would say that it's on a scale of healthy to unhealthy. And it's up to you and your relationship with God and your questions that you ask and your self-awareness to figure out, what is this healthy or unhealthy to me? And my rule of life, it's a question I ask myself for all actions and even habits, because masturbation is a habit. It can even be more so in an addiction. And my question I would ask myself is, does this compromise or elevate my relationship with God?
That's powerful.
Really good. That's really good. And I also think too, right? So let's just point this out. 1 Corinthians, I believe 5, talks about that all sexual immorality is sin, lust. So if we are, and I just want to, for clarity's sake, just point it out, if masturbation is us imagining somebody naked or past experiences, anything sexual, that's a sin. That's not gray. That's black and white. You have willfully stepped into lust.
Yeah.
The
thing that we want to address is it's not even really, again, it's about having the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, it's like some people are never even willing to consider the fact that you could masturbate and not be displeasing God. And I think that it's...
What do you mean by that?
Oh, because first of all, we are so good in faith organizations and just faith talk of whatever God's revealed to me is for everyone.
True.
And so
Yeah.
if you disagree with me, you're obviously immature or young in the Lord. And so I'm just going to stand here and beat you with Bible verses until you succumb to my assault. And I do think that it's possible to masturbate and not do anything with lust. I do think that's a fairly small, because I've done that, and I've actually been able to like follow through and finish, and not fall into lust. But a lot of times, we'll start it with the best intentions and get like, and then that,
and your imagination is like, woo.
Your speedometer is going up and about 60 miles per hour. It's like, never mind.
Yeah.
And then you're straight into it.
And then you're straight into full sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you hate it.
Yeah. And I love what you said, that it's not about right and wrong. It's about the scale of unhealthy to healthy. What that reminds me of is the verse, and forgive my lack of Bible knowledge right now to quote the specific reference, but the verse that says, where Paul writes, all things are beneficial, but not all things are, all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial.
Yeah.
Meaning I could have permission to do all these things, but does it benefit me? And to me,
that's good.
The true reflection of intimacy is when I stop asking, can I do this?
Yep.
And when I start asking, does this honor God? Does this make me better?
Yeah.
Then I know I'm in a good place.
Let's take it to just a human level. Like my friends who value the things and make choices based on what's going to fill me up and show me love. Those are the friends I entrust with my whole self. And I think that God is the same way. If I approach him and it's like, I'm going to choose not to do this, because too often I get up to 60 miles per hour and then I go into lust of whatever level that is. Then I don't want to lose the edge off my intimacy and my love relationship with God.
Yeah.
Just for that
gratification for a moment.
Totally.
Because we can live without sex and masturbation. In fact, we serve a single God, and Paul was single, but we can't live without intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think that what's the desire behind us wanting to masturbate is our need for intimacy, our need to be loved. And that's beautiful. Like God gave us this sexual desire, and he's like, he sees it in us and he's like, wow, that is such a sacred, powerful part of who you are. And I think that when I saw that in me, and I was realizing, behind the act of masturbation was actually something really beautiful and something that God really loves about me. In fact, he has such compassion on the reason why you masturbate. And from that, I felt like that gave me even deeper freedom, because I realized that there was love in it, that there was something that God loved in it.
And I think what you just said is so key. Behind the desire for masturbation is something good, and all of us, it is the need for connection.
Yeah.
It is that need. It fulfills something. It really does. And so I think the danger in it is that we can fulfill that connection selfishly. Either
fulfill the connection, or for myself, I think for years, just with my growing up and going through the sexual abuse, that my appropriate need for connection became inappropriately eroticized. And that was about 12 to 13. And I was not mature enough. And there was no one around me that I could talk to who would help me understand that, A, it's not the end of the world. And B, it says nothing about your sexual identity. But it's simply something you've learned to do to comfort yourself.
Yeah.
And that became, when I look back on my life, and sadly it's been in the last 3 years, but really the last year and a half, that I've figured out so much of what caused me such grief and sexual acting out wasn't really about sex. It was about this little kid who needed to feel loved and connection and felt so much pain because I never knew how to get there, that I would act out.
Wow.
And so I think for a lot of people, if they're out there, it's so hard to go beneath the surface and to actually ask yourself, like, what am I really doing? And to explore that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We won't talk about this tonight, but when I talk to people about porn, I'm like, what kind of porn do you watch?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, no one's ever asked me that before. Why do you want to know?
Crickets.
Because that will give you a whole bunch of information. And it's the same way with masturbation.
Yeah.
It's like becoming so comfortable with yourself that it's like, yes, I actually have done it before. I might do it again before I die. So I'm not going to fall over and act like, in a King James Version voice tone, that never happens here.
Yeah.
And humanity requires us to lean on one another.
Yeah.
And in our isolation, that is exactly where the enemy wants to take us.
Yep.
Exactly.
So to the people who are out there watching, they're like, wait, guys and girls masturbate, or like that many people masturbate. The enemy doing something good, but I just think there's knowing that we're not the only one.
Yeah.
In fact, like so many of my friends talk about it all the time. And that kind of came with some of the freedom of me having those conversations and being like, oh, so I'm not the only one.
Yep. Yeah.
And also, I just also want to say is that, you know, I said that whatever, when I was 20, that's when I stopped masturbating, but the journey's not over. You know, I may have stopped the action, but God's not on behavior modification. He's more about heart transformation. Right. And lust has so much, when you read in the Bible about lust, it has so much to do with your thoughts as well, not just your actions. Yeah. So while I may have stopped the act, I still had to rein in the thoughts. Yes. The thoughts were still wildfire. I'm thinking, oh, wow, like all the things I would do, you know? But I had to rein that back in as well and know it was from the inside out. Yeah. The action, the out may have ended, but the inside God still cared at. And I think sometimes we think purity, if I can use that word, is like whose skin touches whose, or like, did I touch my own skin? But I think purity is like, was my peace broken or shaken? Yeah. What happened to my shalom? And I think that's what happened is after I'd masturbate, I'd be like, man, my peace just feels shaken. Yeah. I feel like I lost a little bit of it. Yeah. And that's when I knew that was influencing my purity.
I want to point out, when Adam and Eve eat the fruit in the garden, we don't know what the fruit is, right? We still the apple, something that's no longer in existence. I don't know. We don't know what the fruit is. The problem was never the fruit. Yeah. The problem was that they allowed something to take God's place in their fulfillment. I'm going to say that again. The problem wasn't the fruit. The problem was that they allowed something else to take God's position of their fulfillment. Wow. And that was the sin. And so the problem isn't masturbation. Yep. The problem isn't pornography. The problem in God's eyes isn't the depth of the grossness of it. Right. It is, I want to fulfill you. I want to be that thing, because we have a God-given hunger in our biology. Yep. And the truth remains is this: we're going to fill our hunger either with God and people or in our own selfish ways. Yeah. Yep. The hungrier I am, like physically, like if I'm hungry, the hungrier I am, the more willing I am to go through a McDonald's drive-through.
Oh my God.
And settle for something cheaper.
Masturbation's one thing. McDonald's drive-through.
It's another M word. But so I think like masturbation is as fulfilling as McDonald's. It sounds really good when you're on an empty stomach. Mm-hmm. But the more that I feed myself throughout the day, the more that
let's not leave McDonald's. As soon as you're done with a burger, you're like, oh my God.
Yes. You're like, what was I thinking? But if I'm new, what's the word I'm looking for? If I'm feeding myself throughout the day with good things, more likely for dinner, I'm going to eat something that gives me nutrients, that fulfills me rightly. In the same sense, the key to anybody overcoming an addiction of masturbation, you name it, fill in the blank, is not, I got to stop. Yeah. It is, I need to find my fulfillment rightly. I need to fill it with people, with vulnerability, with the presence of God. And when I do that, I won't settle for a cheap second.
And I think the issue with pornography is exactly what you're saying. It's not that it's too much fulfillment, it's too little.
That's so good.
It's like, it has little nutritional value.
Yes.
Like, there's a whole lot of better things I could be doing with my time.
Yes. Yeah.
That will actually fill you up.
Yeah. And I loved what you were saying about the garden, because to explain it in almost like a slightly different way, is that I think self-denial is something that's really valued in our faith.
Yeah.
In other words, like, self-control is a skill we need in every area of our lives. And I think that's sometimes what's the narrative in faith communities that frustrates me, is we're like, don't do this, 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 this. And in other words, don't eat off that tree. But what would it look like instead if we were like, oh, but look at this whole garden you get to have.
Yes.
What if we shifted it from the thing you can't do to the thousands of things you can do?
Yes.
The thing that I can go wear a hot outfit and go hang out with my friends and feel like fire, or that I can go practice mixed martial arts. That these are all parts of me in some way fulfilling part of my sexuality, because sexuality has so much to do with intimacy.
Yeah.
And it's in a different way.
Yeah.
And these are the things I can do instead of focusing on the one thing I can't do.
That is the garden, right?
Yeah.
All the trees that God said, you can have every other tree, but this one you surely shall not.
Yeah.
And the enemy, the serpent, comes in and goes, did God really say?
Yeah.
He was trying to get man to identify the relationship with God by the one no instead of the infinity yeses.
Exactly.
And this is our sexuality.
Yeah.
Like, this was my struggle in my youth. Like, I can't have sex. I can't have sex. That's the enemy.
Yeah.
Saying, this, look at what you can't do. Did God really say you can't? Instead of, oh my gosh, what an incredible opportunity in my singleness to find out who I am, to go on trips, to go to Tahoe with friends, to do all these things. There's so many yeses, and the enemy wants to distract us by that one no, these couple no's. Okay, so I want to ask this question, because sometimes I'm walking around church. I know that our generation is a little bit more open to talking about some of this stuff.
Oh, no.
But here's my question.
You don't understand the ways of the Lord.
But my question is, I walk around like a Sunday morning congregation, and I look at some of these guys, and I'm like, there's no way they don't struggle, right? Like, it's, in your experience, you've walked with so many people. Like, is this generational?
Well, like I said earlier, I've talked very openly about my past, so I get talked to very openly, because people are desperate to find someone who's willing to talk like we're talking. And it's amazing how many boomer couples and 40s couples who are married and the wife doesn't like sex. A lot of times the guy haven't done any exploration in their soul part of their relationship. And so a lot of times she doesn't masturbate, but he will. And it's just an understood, like, you take care of that. Or it's like, okay, can we get this over with? This is your once a month.
So this is what I have to look forward to?
Yeah. No. Because it's learning like a connection.
Yeah.
God in the garden, he came looking for Adam and Eve for connection. We have to go look for connection.
That's good.
And if you're not finding connection, that's because you don't want it bad enough.
Wow.
So we're going to bang on you a little bit. Go to counseling.
Yeah.
You can even go to sex counseling.
Really?
Yeah, boomers, you can do that.
So for the boomers, or even the younger married people out there who maybe their needs aren't getting met, so they're taking it literally into their own hands.
Oh my goodness!
Do you tell them man, maybe you should communicate with your spouse, like, hey, here's what I don't like.
It's amazing. I've actually been a part of some of those types of counseling situations, and it's amazing how much just connection. You don't even have to talk about sex. Just if I can just get a wife and a husband to communicate, just about their hearts or explore their souls together and figure out what is it, like, guys, chores around the house, that's sexual foreplay after about the first 2 or 3 months. Because they've seen all your cute tricks and they ain't impressed.
Yeah.
Guys everywhere are trading in hammers for vacuums right now.
I knew I felt called to do the dishes. Anyway, it's just really powerful. I just want to encourage, if you're a married couple, 40s and 50s, and your sex life is single, do something about it. It doesn't have to be.
That's so good.
And I think negative emotions do to like respond to? I've talked to plenty of sex therapists about this, and they say negative emotions block sexual desires.
They do.
And so when we're not, as women, when like our foreplay starts the moment after we had sex, like the moment after orgasm finishes, foreplay's already begun. And I heard this.
Is that true? All right, continue.
You obviously don't know anything about this. Go ahead, Riley. Keep talking.
And I think another important thing to know is that the way we make love was taught by the way we were loved.
Oh, that is so good.
And so when it comes to our sex life, and we're talking about married people right now, is understanding how was I loved when I was younger?
Yeah.
And what are those negative emotions that are attached to it? Because that's blocking my sexual desires.
Exactly.
Jeez. So I've just been enlightened. This has been good. I want to just read a C.S. Lewis breakdown on masturbation. And so I kind of paraphrased it because he does that old English thing sometimes. So just listen to this. I'm going to read it, but just center in with me and listen to what he has to say about masturbation. He says, "For me, the real evil of masturbation is that it takes an appetite, which is God-given, and it leads an individual into themselves to complete themselves in a collection of imaginary brides. This keeps the person from getting out and really uniting with another person. The collection of imaginary brides is always accessible, always subservient. It calls for no sacrifices or adjustments and can be endowed with erotic and psychological attractions with no person can ever rival. Among this collection of imaginary brides, meaning the people we imagine when we're masturbating, a man or woman is always adored, always the perfect lover, and no demand is made on his unselfishness. No mortification is ever imposed on his vanity. In the end, you become a medium in which you increasingly adore yourself. And it's not only love that is sterilized in masturbation, but it's our imagination. When we pervert the imagination, it provides us a shadowy substitute for virtues and success. And here's his example. For example, picturing I was rich instead of earning and saving.
Wow.
Masturbation encourages a similar kind of abuse to our imagination. Ultimately, masturbation is to a lover as daydreaming is to a lazy man. It casts a future in which it cannot deliver on.
Wow.
And masturbation, whatever, call it right, call it wrong. I guess the question we just want to ask for you, first of all, there's no shame that you even have the question. You want to do it.
Yeah.
You have that desire. Is it beneficial for you? Does it draw you closer to God? Does it draw you closer to people? That's all we have. So seek into your own heart. Ask yourself, does this make me better? There's no shame around it. God is so good, right? He's so with us. He's so imminent.
Yeah.
And so, man, I just think there's so much freedom that comes with what you started at the beginning. Ask yourself the question, why do I do it? What's the motive?
And know that the world perverts our sexuality. The church shames it, but the kingdom celebrates it.
Tell them again.
The world perverts our sexuality. The church shames it, but the kingdom celebrates it. But a celebration, like a surprise party, takes time, right?
Yeah. Anticipation.
And so the celebration may take some time.
I love that. Riley, first of all, thank you so much for your vulnerability. It takes a strong, confident woman to come honestly to talk about that with two of us. And I know that there's probably people out there like sweating hearing us talk about it. Yeah. We want you to know that you are so loved and you are so worthy of truth out there. And we are with you. And so if you haven't, do us a favor, subscribe to our channel, share this, like the video, and go add Riley and I on our Instagram page at Rylie and Riley. We would love to encourage you in your single journey. You guys have a great day. Thanks again, Riley.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out our podcast.
Yeah, we're not actually here to debate. We're just here to make you think.
Yep. We actually don't think we have all the answers, but we just love having the conversation. So do us a favor, hit subscribe. If you liked it, share it. Give us a like. If you didn't like it, no
That's
problem.
okay.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.